But yes, go ahead.
But the guardians were whispering things in your ear. Was that
to get you to quit? Yeah.
To what?
Trying to discourage you. All that stuff is done
on purpose.
On purpose.
Because that was a psych, right? It's like then you figure that
you're
not allowed to.
Well, you figure that out. All that you figure out as you go along. Yes, what you're saying is correct. That is one way to perceive it. As you go through more of them, you become more familiar with it. So that some of the stuff doesn't bother you. It changes from in the beginning to not knowing it and figure it out. Whereas you start going through the later ones, you become more confident and eager, and you want to actually go through it because you now have under your belt the experience of going through several. Now, some of the later ones, we don't have enough of room to do them in here. We have to get a bigger place. There's some where you go through some. We've only scratched the surface. That's basically what I can tell you. Some we can't do in here because it's too small. And when we get to that point, what I would probably do is having a connection with Mason. I'd probably rent out a Masonic lodge for the night, where we have the space to actually perform the entire ritual. So that'll come down the road. Anybody else? Go ahead, I'm listening. I'm just fixing this camera. This thing is acting up. When the invocation, did you hear the invocation? Sekhmet was symbolic of a fierce warrior, pure anger, devourer of blood. Now, it doesn't mean literally she drank blood. She was one of the highest forms of a vampire goddess. She could absorb the energy of the gods, and she was not weak. It's all symbolic. This is an aspect of you.
I know, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes. So Sekhmet represents that warrior side of your nature, that side of your nature where you draw strength from. The Sekhmet energy is not concerned with likes and dislikes, not concerned with if you love or like me. She couldn't give two shits about that. It's about getting the job done, and whatever means necessary to get the job done. Everybody needs to draw upon that Sekhmet energy in certain situations in their life. People that lack it are usually pushovers, weak-minded, and they get taken advantage of. Now, if you paid attention to the order we did it, which we'll get further into, every archetype represented an aspect. As you see, triad of light, triad of darkness. One candle for each one, 3. The numbers are 6. You always got multiples of 3. 3 times 2 is 6, etc. 3 knocks on the door. All of this ties into the ritual. You have to pay attention to that. The black flame, which was mentioned multiple times, that's always in the center, because all of it emerges out of darkness. There's nothing that does not emerge out of darkness. I don't care what it is you study, what it is you think you know, you're going to find out. If you don't start there, if that's not your point of origin, you're not really studying anything. I don't give a shit what anybody tells you. I don't care what it is. When you start, the problem is we've been taught our whole life to start in the light. Everything is coming to the light. Peace and love and all that shit, and it got us nowhere. It got us used, abused, taken advantage of, mentally enslaved, and a whole bunch of other shit that was not productive for us. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Sure, no, go ahead. So as many as you want.
The earth, air, fire, and water. When you breathe it into our
pineal,
what as a master were you breathing in?
Excellent question. Now remember, when you were taken out of what the mask represents, when you were taking out of the blindfold, that represents Lucifer. Lucifer is the light bearer, okay? Not Lucifer the devil that you're taught in religion. I'm not saying that's what anybody here thinks. Unfortunately, people think Lucifer is the devil, and they're ignorant if they think that. Because when you're talking about Lucifer, Azazel, Samael, those are different archetypes. They're not the same thing. People confuse them in religion as being all the same thing. That is completely false. If you study and do your research, even in the Bible, in the 6th chapter of Genesis, the 4th verse, it talks about these so-called demons or gods coming to the planet and having intercourse with the females and producing children. It's right there in their Bible. Okay? When we're saying the Agatho demon, you're tapping in, you were one of those Nephilims or great gods. That's what this ritual is supposed to bring into the realization of. Those great gods that they talked about in the Bible that are portrayed as negative and are always told these are the adversaries of the good guys, were the ones that were actually the sustainers of the planet. And they're the ones that kept the harmony and the balance, man. They teach it to you reverse. So when you're doing that, you're accessing all that. You see Lucifer, which represents the light bearer, when you come out of the darkness into the light, and the flaming sword is symbolic. It represents that now intellect, because you were bathed and purified and consecrated in the darkness, and now you've emerged into light or intellect. Because when you first entered the lodge, you couldn't do it yet because you needed to be purified. The 4 candles you see in the room represent the 4 sons of Heru. Everything was done inside of this circle. When you saw, after the circle was cast, if you saw the sword was taken, there was a swipe done above and a swipe done below, representing as above, so below, becoming a Baphomet. You understand? This is what was taking place consciously and unconsciously, whether you were aware of it or not. Some of it, again, as I've said before in previous rituals and classes, it's not all going to sink in tonight. It might start over the next couple of days, next couple of weeks. Some people have what I like to call aftershocks, like an earthquake. It lasts for months sometimes, because you can't process it all at once. Even though you think you can, you might have went through and say, yeah, I know what I did. Honestly, you really don't. You kind of got to let everything just sink in. It's the same thing in any initiatic rite, because you were more focused on going through it than really absorbing it. So now when you have time to sit back and now think, and you can go walk through the ritual again in your head, and what's good to do in the future, if we ever get to the point where we do it again for newer people, now that going through it, you can actually sit in the lodge and watch. And I recommend that to people so they can see what they went through. Because every time I do this, and I don't know how many done this a bunch of times now, I see myself when I watch you guys. I see myself, and sometimes I'm laughing because I remember some of the parts of it, and I say in my head, man, you know what I mean? You just reflect on it. But what it's supposed to do, anytime you're in the darkness, you draw upon your strength and your power. You're using pure intellect. You're using this. So yes, when you were breathed upon and purified by air, it represents, if you look on the Baphomet statue, you see the flame in the forehead of Baphomet, meaning his pineal is activated. You understand? So that's just, again, all of it was symbolic when you were purified by all the elements, because before we can bring down the triad of darkness, you guys had to be prepared. We couldn't do that yet because you had not been prepared yet. You were willing candidates. What we call that out there where you wait is called an anteroom or a chamber room. In all of ancient initiatic orders, that's where all the preparations were done. Candidates would always enter through the ante in the chamber room. They're always divested of all metals, anything metallic or anything valuable. Next time, don't bring no phones or anything into the lodge. Okay, I know what she had when we had to tuck it in. You're supposed to take anything out of your pockets. Really, technically, we don't go that length. You're not even supposed to wear jewelry. The candidates, you're not even supposed to have any jewelry on when you enter. You're supposed to be divested of all metals or any valuables. The objective is as you're divested of everything, you're supposed to come in here with nothing and feel like something was taken from you, symbolically. And then, yes, you're supposed to come and walk through and feel awkward and bump in and just feel weird walking around. All that's normal. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I hope some of y'all don't got claustrophobia. If you do, you need to let us know down the road. All these things are done to test your willpower. How much can you really take? And if you don't want to, you don't have to. It's not mandatory. You can quit anytime you want. That is not mandatory. I want to make that clear. Nobody's forced to do anything. That's why we ask twice in the chamber and anteroom, and we also ask out here, are you doing this of your own free will and accord? That's the key. Nobody's ever forced to do anything against their own free will and accord. And anybody can quit at any time, but if you do quit, you have to start all over again from the beginning. You can't do the next one if you didn't complete the prior one. So that's how it works. It's just you got to earn your way through. This is what it was called being an initiate. See, you have all these other orders where people have these titles and they call themselves Grandmaster this, and they mostly buy their way through these lodges and stuff. So, yeah, but that's a good question about. Go ahead.
So, Mike, just have a confirmation on mine. In the Haitian pantheon, Danto.
Yes.
Danto is also synonymous with Sekhmet.
Correct. You mean similarity-wise, archetypes?
Similarity-wise.
Yeah, well, even when you go into the Haitian Vodun pantheon, same thing with Baron Samedi. When you look at Baron Samedi, he's dressed just like a worshipful master dresses in a lodge. When you go over to the Caribbean, even especially Haiti, you'll find out the way masonry is practiced there is not practiced the same way here. It's totally different. There's a lot of hidden voodoo and ritualistic occult magic incorporated into the system, whereas here in America, most American Masons, it's more religious, and it's centered around the mysteries of Solomon's temple in the Bible. And I'm telling you this from going through it. And I've seen both spectrums of it. It's like night and day. So, yes, you're going to see a lot of the, Vodun, spirits of the dead, deities of the crossroads, infused in a lot of those rituals. And there is a similarity between that archetype and segment. And when you're working, and it's important that you recognize that when you're doing your spiritual work, because Anubu would be the same thing as La Santa Muerte, the Holy Death, because of the representation of what it connects with. Because Anubu in this ritual, and if you listen to the invocations, this was a lot more aggressive. That set you and prepared and created the balancement and harmony in the body before you could invoke this energy. You understand? There's a reason for that. Because all of this resides within you. You just got to figure out to balance it out. This ritual is to show you you can't have one without the other. You can't be just completely dark all the time. Then there's something wrong with you. You can't be completely light and fluffy all the time. Then there's something wrong with you. A black adept knows all of it comes out of darkness and works with it all, but knows the right time when to execute and work with those energies. So that's the difference between this path and other paths, where most paths focus on one or the other. You have some people that just want to be, very spiritual and light-sided, fluffy. And then you have some people that just want to be dark and gory all the time. Neither of it works. You have to be able to infuse both. But not ever forgetting to recognize, not realizing that's the wrong term, that it all comes out of the darkness. It starts there. And working the darker aspect of it, yes, it is a lot stronger. But you got to come to that terms within yourself as need be. You understand? Where some people get conflicted, they start working with shit they think that they like. And it becomes a mistake. What you like and what you need is two different things. So some people just start shifting one way because they feel like this is what I like, and they keep doing it, and they keep doing it, and they wonder why they ain't getting no results, because there's another aspect of themselves that they're neglecting. And it could be some lighter stuff. You might need, like the last ritual we did, the Hathor and Asset, which, Hathor is just not the goddess of love and sexuality, which if you're trying to increase your sexuality in that ritual, you could have focused upon that. But Hathor is also used to overcome challenges and achieve goals. That's what I focused on when we did it. I didn't need the other one. You understand? Don't focus on what you think you need. Don't focus on what you think you want. Try to really go within and figure out what is it I really need. Usually when you reflect and look at your life, that'll tell you what you need.
What I find, when I do the invocation of the triad of darkness, I don't do it all the time, but it's like I know when I need to do that ritual. Whenever I do it, no matter what time I do it, I always get some sort of energy out of it. Something I get out of it.
Yeah.
It carry me through my day, enable me to figure things out, just like that.
Well, okay, that's a good point. Remember, the first invocation we did when we offered incense and libation to the Natiru, what did it say? That invocation is to center, look within, and center yourself on what it is you're trying to accomplish. Most of these rituals are geared for what you just said, to being able to achieve things, get results, get things done. As I said before at the last ritual, the tangible things people gravitate towards. And I told you, you guys have witnessed this being us being together for 15 plus years. It always starts out with a big circle, and then it starts to melt down, because what happens is once the tangible stuff disappears, people disappear with it. When it starts to become pure mental, it becomes a little more complicated, because people like, what is it? How do I do this? This determines if this path is really for you, because everything is about tapping into your subjective realm. and making that a reality on your objective realm. Because it all starts there. All is mental is all. If you can't grasp that concept, see, everybody likes to come when it's the African shit, the drumming and the ancestors and the spirits. I did that intentionally. You understand? And then I pulled away from it. And as it got pulled away from, people started to slowly trickle away. Because it never fails. And you know this, we've been doing this shit for how long? That's because people still have an issue within themselves identifying only with something that they're comfortable with. Because people gravitate to what they know. People tend to back off of what they're not comfortable with or what they don't understand. That's human nature. But this path is always about challenging yourself with the unknown. You should never always want to put yourself in a comfort zone. Because if you put yourself in a comfort zone, you're not bringing out the divine in you. You're limiting yourself. Who wants to be a part of something constantly where you know everything? And you're just going through the rhythms. This is the problem with a lot of dogmas, philosophies, and religions and cultures or whatever, because it's structured. This, we delve into everything. There's nothing we don't tap into. We mess with everything because it's all connected. And it's up to you to connect it. I know you had another question. Go ahead.
Mine is going to be a long answer, but I just wanted
That's all
to
right, go
go
ahead.
through what invocations you did, but in sort of a not an Egyptian.
So what do you mean?
normal invocation.
Okay.
Layman's terms.
In layman's terms, yes.
Well, when I was doing the invocations,
So the first one was set? Or-
No.
No?
No, the first one we did was the Triad of Light. We started with Usir. Actually, it was Aset, then it went to Usir, and then it went to Heru. Okay? Now, what I did, I know actually there was stuff going on in the ritual. There was an English translation right after it. So what was said in the Metru Netu, or the hieroglyphs, was also repeated in English.
And
I don't know
I
if you
heard
caught
that
it.
in English,
Okay.
but I just thought if you could just break it down, like to remove challenges, for instance.
Oh, I got you.
or-
Okay, I got you. Okay, when you listen to the invocations, each one, like we'll start with the Triad of Darkness. Remember, Sekhmet was dealing with warrior type,
Right.
bloodthirsty, not taking no shit. But notice also after Sekhmet, it also connected it to the black flame Set. All of it was connected to Set at the end, and there was also a separate invocation for Set as the god, the isolator, the separator.
And was Set indicated
Yes.
with the Triad of Light as
Darkness,
well?
darkness.
Just the dark.
Triad of Darkness, but
Not
then was
Set.
invocated at the end and tied it all together, because it all emerges from Set. You understand? Because that's the representation of where it all comes from. That first representation there, when you see the actual archetype, we did a thing with a pep. This will help you understand. Set manifests because all of these weaknesses that we're identifying in these rituals, Set is the only one that's able to conquer that, and that representation was a pep in another ritual that we did. A pep or Apophis is it's in the Egyptian stories when you read them. That was the one demon that Ra always tried to keep at bay but could never defeat. Set was the only one that was able to keep him at bay and defeat him. What that represents is you overcoming your lower nature, your weaknesses that you give into, things that are holding you down, restricting you. So when you did the invocations with Set, you heard how you can type into that isolation. The isolated consciousness represents an aspect of you where your divine reality or your divine state of mind exists. Until you isolate yourself from everything that's had an influence over you, good and bad, not just bad stuff. When you approach this work, you have to come to a mind where you separate yourself from everything. There's no limits on this realm. You got to leave your personal ideologies, your opinions, traditions, how you were raised. It's all got to be left at the door. That's why Set is invoked, because without that, nothing can be accomplished. Then Anubu was connecting you to the living and the dead. Anubu is that spirit. It's like, visualize it as he is the gateway for you to make that transition. And he brings you through the duat. And remember, in the story, you have to go through the 12 duats to be raised up. So Anubu, what he does is, when you study the weighing of the scales, and after one's heart is so-called weighed on the scales, they're taken down through the duats, or the underworld. So he is the guidance or the connection to that when you invoked him. Now, when you go back to the triad of light, it dealt with a little bit more lighter things, in a sense, but you really had to listen to it. Asset wasn't all light and fluffy if you listened to it. Asset does provide that motherly nature aspect, but there was an aspect of Asset that we invoked there that was sly and intelligence, if you listen to it closely. So don't just look at Asset. Everybody looks at Asset as Mother Isis and all, and that's okay, but that's not all it represents. Heru represent, everybody's trying to become a rising Heru, right? Heru represents salvation, because that's actually, I brought this one intentionally because that's Ray Harakarti. Ray Harakarti is Heru resurrected as Ra. You understand that? Because they all come up under the triad of Ra or Ray. Usir, right? But when we start first with Heru, you're raising, it said, rise up as a Heru, as it said in the invocation. You are trying to become a Heru in the sense that that represents being an incarnation, as it said in there, of a living God and a deity. Now it says in there, I added goddess, because a lot of these rituals that were done back in the day, they don't incorporate the feminine. So there's some stuff that I put in there, added to it, because I like to have the male-female, okay? And then Usir, okay, represents you, because in the invocation, remember, what happened to Usir? And who did it? Set. Slayed Usir, right? And what happened to his body? He was cut up into 14 pieces, put in a box, etc. You know the story. Heru avenged him. You are all representations of Usir, because you are dying a mental and a spiritual death. Mental death. And you're being resurrected and brought back to life in your true state of mind. That's what that represents when Usir is resurrected, right? It says his body was put back together, right? But then, here's the other aspect of Asset. She took the phallus, right? It says in the story. And this is where the Catholic Church, by the way, gets the story of the Immaculate Conception, right? Where did they get a story that a female can conceive without sexual intercourse? They took that story from here, because she was able to tap into her divine. Because remember, women were originally able to give birth without the aid of a man, through their bobo and through their mitochondria and DNA. That's a scientific fact you can look up. You didn't need the man's semen at one point. Now you do, because you forgot how to do it. That's a whole nother story and a whole nother class. So she was the one, through the power of the feminine, was able to resurrect Usir. And every man is recharged by the right female. We're external. Women are internal. We're charged by their womb. We can't recharge ourselves. That's getting into a whole nother. But we're not able to do that without the aid of a female. But, let me stress this. A female who is right. Not just, can't go to any female just because she's a female. It has to be two of like mind, like body, and that regeneration can take place. So all of this is aspect, all these things that we're talking about, these concepts, these ideologies, this is all stuff that goes on within you constantly. You understand? You have to activate it at the right time so you can start to make the transition and grow. The challenge is, as I said earlier, people start to pick and choose shit that they like, because they think what they like all the time is what they need. And that's where the confusion comes in. How do you know what you need? That's a question you should be asking. All you got to do is analyze your life. Are your finances fucked up? Right? Your finances could be fucked up, but you're trying to be Miss Spiritual or Mr. Spiritual Guru Levitator, and you're trying to be, I'm a health and I'm a healer, right? You're all these things, but you can't pay your fucking rent. You understand what I'm saying? So what does that tell you? You need to focus in another area. Something showing you what you need, vice versa. Then you have people that have the money, have the finances, but they're miserable, right? They piss money away, or they might get into doing drugs because they don't know what to do with their money. They have so much of it, they become so bored they don't know what to do with it, but they're lacking spiritual energy. So they need to tap into another element and work on themselves, where they might be just focusing on working all the time and doing work where they're getting the financial blessings, but where is, that harmony? So the triad of light and darkness is combining both of those energies to create harmony within the black adept. Now, how you do it and how you go about it is going to vary from individual to individual in the room. It's not going to be the same. for everybody. That's another unique thing about this, is there's not one set way to do it. So it's up to you to figure out what you need. Who knows better what you need than who? Than you. You understand? Not somebody telling you what you need. And it doesn't mean you can't talk and dialogue and get advice, but in the end, it should be your final decision. You know, you should look at it, see if that's the case, apply it to you, and then that's how you get results. You understand? It's like I said before, look, and we had this conversation. And we talked about this on the radio show, if you might like music, like I was telling you, might want to be a singer, right? You might love music, but you ain't got a lick of talent, okay? So just because you like music and you ain't got a lick of talent and you go to do a ritual to become a world famous singer and you go, oh shit, it's not working. You got to be practical in your work. You can't go to do a ritual to become a famous singer if you ain't got a lick of talent. So that's called planning your intent and analyzing your ritual. If you can't sing at all, why would you even waste your energy trying to become, and there's got to be some basis there for the work that you're trying to do. Because if you don't have a starting point somewhere, you understand? And it also depends on the type of work, don't get me wrong. So that's very important. So be practical. And when we did that whole radio show on planning your ritual, you should always sit down and plan your work, because plan it to the extent where, look at it, is this practical? Is this going to work? Am I approaching this the right way? And if the answers to those are yes, then go ahead and do it. If there's too many no's, maybes, I'm not sure, there's your answer not to do it. You need to go in another direction. Something else is going on. You understand? And how do you, again, I'm going to say this again, and most people miss the little things. How do you know what to do and what you need? All you got to do is analyze your life. Are your relationships jacked up? Are you constantly with chicks that are doing you wrong? One bad relationship to another, vice versa. Are you a female that's in abusive relationships with men? I'm not just talking about physically, where they just take advantage of you, whatever. If you're a person that you might get money, but you can't hold on to money. You understand? Look at these things. This is a telltale sign of what areas of your life need work. It's that simple. But if you got those issues going on, and you're worried about, doing comedic yoga or some shit 3-4 times a week, what good is that? How's that not creating any harmony or connecting you to anything when you still got all these other problems going on? I'm not saying that can't be a good thing. I'm just saying I watch people, again, gravitate towards the shit that they like while other areas of their life are running amok. And then they want to know why, like what's going on? Why ain't I getting results? This is not a path where somebody's going to take you by your hand, rub you on your back, and figure it all out for you. Sometimes you got to let somebody fall on their face so they can figure it out on their own. It's the same thing like when you came in the lodge, like you said, you walked in and you feel awkward, a little bit off center when you're walking through the lodge. All of that again, and I'm glad you bring it up, all of that again is supposed to make you feel like that. You're not supposed to feel comfortable. And I'm not going to lie, if you've done these rituals, and some have done several, always come here preparing to expect the unexpected. Never come here, I've watched, because they'll tell you, some of the people that are here now, we did one ritual, we had 25 people here, right? That was the Eternal Light and Darkness ritual. When we started that ritual, a lot of people fell off because of what they went through in that ritual, because they don't understand it. Some people were religious. They had one brother, I'm going to defeat the jinn, that Jamaican dude. That's your buddy, man. That dude, he's in character, man. It's just like, because they didn't understand it, because never come into these rituals with a preconceived notion of what you think you know, because you'll get your feelings hurt all the time. And this is not that type of path. What we do to all the people that so-called claim to be comedically conscious, we do more comedic work than most of these comedic groups, period. Because we're really connecting on a spiritual, metaphysical, occult, and magical level with these deities. Whereas you got all these other people out here talking about Egypt, giving you historical breakdowns. That's great. Giving you all the history. That's great. But where is the work? What work are we doing? Because if people want to see a change in the world, like all people talk about is all the problems that's going on. We see shit is crazy out here now. But what are we doing collectively as a group to change that energy? What would do here? If more people, I'm not saying they got to be here with us and do exactly what we're doing. But if more people did what we're doing in groups on a regular basis, things would start to change for the better, period. And those individuals that are causing this bullshit would have no choice but to change. Because what we do in here is not only have an effect on us spiritually and energy-wise, it's also have an effect on the planet, whether you're conscious of it or not. Because you have a magnetic grid that works within you, that works in conjunction with the planet. So if you're changing your magnetic grid, what do you think you're also doing to the planet? You have the ability to change the weather, really, honestly, if you really knew how to tap in. And if we did this in large groups of people, I don't care what your ethnicity is, that shit is, it's regardless. You could be black, Latino, Asian, Indian, white, it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of connecting on the right level. If we did that as a group and stop all this nonsense, all this, these little Mickey Mouse clubs that people start and say, if you don't follow it this way and this way only, you're not in the right. Everybody thinks that their shit is right. And anybody that knows me and works with me and these brothers, we all been working together for years. We never try to force our methodology, ideology, or what we know on people. We're not interested. I'm not interested in saving anything or anybody. Let me say that right now. My job, their job, and your jobs is you have a responsibility now that you have this information. When the right situation presents, you're supposed to share this and uplift. But it's not your job to convert nobody. And I say that because, as I've said before, you can't make anybody do something they don't want to do. They're going to do what they want to do anyway. That's the other thing we've all gotten caught up over the years in different stuff we've studied and belong to. We think it's a save the world mission.
Well, but when we did our promise,
Your oath, okay.
I thought that we were supposed to keep things secret. Was it just particularly in of the lodge?
Yes.
Not the
No.
ritual?
You're supposed to. The actual ritual that you just did, you're not supposed to in depth. I'm talking about every single facet of it. Though we're talking about points of it, you can't fully understand it unless you go through it.
Right.
So it's not going to make sense to somebody if you talk to somebody.
I see.
If you right.
But we can share our knowledge as far as
Correct.
the ritual.
Correct, because remember in the oath it said what? Feel free to share it openly with somebody who you know went through it. Told you that in the ritual. So if you know somebody went through this, like anybody in this room right now, you can talk in depth, front to back, about anything in the ritual because you know they took the oath and they went through it.
About the ritual.
About the ritual.
Right.
Now, the stuff we're talking about now and on camera, we're just talking about points. Some people grasp the concepts, but I'm going to tell you this. It's just like people that read books on Freemasonry that never went through Freemasonry. You can buy a book on Freemasonry and read the ritual from front to back. And these guys will tell you that's not a telltale sign of what actually goes on in the ritual. So it's the same thing. You'll never grasp any initiatic order or any ritual or initiation or whatever it might be unless you actually experience it. And we always encourage on this path, you should experience things, again, of your own free will, not forced. You should experience things because the experience is the teacher. When you experience something, that is what really makes you learn. Because we could sit here and talk all day about any spiritual ritual or tradition. All right, we're talking and we're spitting it, but what's the best way to learn it? Experience it yourself. It's that simple. We don't do that. That's also an aspect of the path of indulgence. Okay, you should indulge on certain levels, on everything in life. Because how are you going to know? You're not going to know until you experience. So yes, it's always encouraged. So you can talk, but you can take the knowledge from this ritual and convey it in your own way.
To others in Canada, let's say.
Big time. Yes.
Is there a name for this lodge, or is it just?
It's when we say it's not really a lodge, because a lodge in the sense we don't have dues, we don't have all these bylaws where we force you to do this and that. It's order, or we use the term order, because when we come together and do these rituals, we're bringing order out of the chaos. So we don't mean order in the sense of like a fraternal order that's bound by bylaws and constitutions, because that's where all the bullshit starts, because then it becomes a structured religion. So when you took your oath and you became part of this order, you were only part of this order that took place tonight. And that order was what we brought out of the chaos. That's what we mean when we say order.
So order, there's no name for it, it's just the order of this.
That's correct.
night.
And really the order out of the chaos that you were making, what you were putting in order was the things about yourself. That's it. So no, you're not part of any group. You didn't take any obligation to be a part of anything, because I don't operate with that. We gave that shit up years ago. We don't bother with any of that nonsense. Because that's where all the politics now start to come in. You understand? So, anybody else? We got about 10 more minutes. Anybody else have any questions?
I want to know why those candles like that. The one for light got the short candle in the middle, and the dark got the long candle in the middle.
Well, who represents the middle? That's Usir. Why is that one? I'm just telling you, I noticed that.
I noticed that too. Yeah.
Why it's burning down the quickest, because that's us. Like I said, that represents us dying and being resurrected. That candle's been burning the quickest since the start of the ritual. You understand? Notice how the triad of darkness is burning down smooth. Look how these are more clean, and these are a little more sloppy on this side. Even the one on the left, it's a little more sloppy. See, you read into that what you want. I mean, you can read candles. I mean, that's personal. But that's what it's representing to me.
As soon as you said that, it burned out.
We saw that, right?
This is what I'm talking about. So it's good that you're noticing stuff like that. All of this is done for a reason. Why is there always a skull present on the altar? That's you. This is a representation of you in your true essence. So that there, you should always be reflecting on when you're doing the rituals. The reason why the metallic mask was worn with the Lucifer face, which I won't show on the camera, that represents the illuminating light. Intellect. Coming out of darkness into light.
Is that why the sword? Because it represents.
The sword, yes, the sword is a symbol of the intellect, and that's why when you took your oath, the sword was extended. You know, technically you can't do it because you're supposed to be touching it, but it's too hard when you got more than. Sometimes these rituals are only done with 2 and 3 people, literally. Sometimes they're only done in groups of 2 or 3. But if we did it in groups of 2 or 3, we'd be here all night. We'd still be doing it. Yeah. So.
At the end, when you did the symbolism with your sword, what was that?
That was that symbol right there. Chaos. Started with the pentagram, because the pentagram, which represents the 5 points, right? You look at the 5 points. You got the 2, 2, 4. Represents 2 things. Penis. 2 arms, head. Let me show you. Stand up there. There's a 6-pointed and a 5-pointed. In the book, if you look, the triad of darkness brings together the 6 points, which represents the female. This represents the masculine. I don't want to say male and female, because then we think of male as a physical male gender. I don't want you to think that. Let's say energy, which is a better term. That represents the masculine. If you look in the Necronomicon book where we did the ritual, you'll see when you cast the triad of darkness, it represents the 6-pointed stars, because you have the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 corners are happy, and then you have the triad of light and darkness. That gives you 6 points. You'll see that in the book. It represents the 6 points, making the 6-pointed star, which is a triangle above, right? And then a triangle that goes down. And what does that represent? As above, so below. That's really an esoterical explanation of it. The 6-pointed star is not just a Hebrew or a Jewish star. So, yeah, that's the order was done. That symbol was drawn, cast. That's the Jewel was drawn over the altar. And then it was encased with chaos. That's what that represents. Because everything, what? Comes out of chaos. Out of chaos comes order. And that's a phrase you'll hear in a lot of metaphysical and occult circles. And that's what we do. That's why we do ritualistic work. We're bringing order out of this chaos. What chaos? The chaos of your subconscious mind. Your mind is your greatest friend and it's your worst enemy. It's how you work with it. Okay? Anybody else?
Is that why the statues are where they are?
in the triangle format.
Yes. Yes, when we set that up intentionally like that. You have one candle representing each archetype, and then you have the archetypes in front of the candles. You have, again here, one for Anubu, one for Set, one for Sekhmet. Over there, you have Usir, one for Usir, one for Aset, one for Heru. Yes. So this, again, representing the triad of light and darkness. You in the center, because that's you. And then behind it, keeping it all grounded, is the black flame, right? The eternal Set, as they call it. The black flame, where all consciousness permeates. The intellect, the spark, the neuromelanin that runs through the brain, our spark, where all consciousness manifests. That's where it all starts, the black flame. That's why at the end of the invocation, even though Set is invoked by himself, separately, after Sekhmet is invoked, it says now, after you did all the invocation, I've now become like Set.
That's what I noticed. I noticed going through the whole thing was to bring balance. And Baphomet did run through because it's took everything to bring everything in order.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it came towards the end, we did Segment before, and Set was at the end. My mind's eye, Segment, clearing
Yeah.
that way.
Because she's the last one invoked.
Right.
And she is a road clearing archetype.
There you go, right.
She also, like Set, not depicted in this statue, but you'll see the other statues we've had here sometimes, a Set with the pekibet knife. It's the knife of separation. Remember, it says in the Egyptian mysteries that Set was cut and pulled from his mother's womb. No, he was ripped from the womb of his mother. That's symbolic because it showed you from birth and in the womb he was a separate thinker. He wasn't a conformist. He was a god of isolation. He's the only one birthed like that that's birthed different than any other archetype when you read the Pantheon. So you see Set has the pekibet knife. Sekhmet holds the pekibet knife because she also represents that, but represents that warrior nature. Remember, she led the 72 conspirators of Set. Some call it the Goetia. But she was the one that led that war, led that charge. She was basically like, I'm down, let's do this, and was like, whatever needs to be done. Kali carries the pekibet knife. You see her carrying the knife of separation. And you see her carrying, she's also represents, she's thirsty, she devours the blood of people. Not physically, but she can devour your energy and take that energy and transition it. And and you see her holding the severed head. She cut the severed head with the pekibet knife and the blood dripping, right? People look at this shit like, what does that mean? That's gory, that's fucking crazy, because they don't understand it. It's how you perceive it and put it into perspective in your subconscious. Once you're able to do that and you approach it on that level, it takes on a whole different meaning. But when you got people that look at this stuff literally, and some people try to carry it out literally where they think all of these stories are literal and they get caught up in worship. And now we're back into being mentally indoctrinated, and we don't want that. Understand? Anybody else?
So can they have a ritual that control people? For example, I call it Babylon. Can they do rituals to control?
Can rituals be done to control the masses? Sure. But the problem is, like I said, what I was saying a few minutes ago, if we all got together like this in large groups, that would shift the energy where we could control certain situations, scenarios, or individuals that maybe have their own agenda in society that are trying to control us politically, economically, and financially. Sure. But the problem is we're all separated with all these different ideologies, dogmas, and philosophies. We're all over the place. We want to be this religion. We want to follow that guru and that leader. And this is done intentionally while we're doing all that and running all over the place all confused. You got people behind the scenes controlling the natural resources, wealth, the power. We're worried, I'm not saying, when I say we're, I'm not talking about us in this room. People are worried about, when the next newest BMW is coming out, or the next newest pair of Jordans, or they're worried about when Friday comes, you know, what strip club they're going to get ready to go to, and how they're just going to run them up. And I'm not saying don't have fun, because I've gone to those places, and I'll go occasionally. There's nothing wrong with it, but when you're consumed with it, and that's your entire life, and that's all you do, now it becomes a problem.
For example, the Jews, the so-called Jews, they do a lot of rituals.
Sure.
Of course.
And look how powerful they are
Right.
worldwide. Because here's the thing, there's two, you look at Jews and Asians. When you go into Walmart and mainstream places, do you see a lot of Chinese people shopping in Walmart? Do you see a lot of Hasidic Jews shopping in Walmart? There's a reason for that, because they only buy and sell from each other. And they can, like you say, they do things to keep that structure strong. And even if they don't like each other, they still keep it amongst themselves. Because you know, anybody that knows and has lived up north, especially in a big city like New York, they own neighborhoods. They have their own schooling system, busing system. They own banks. They own lawyers, doctors, grocery stores. So when you have an economic infrastructure set up like that, you can control everything. So they've created their own little village where they all buy and sell from each other. And if you get sick, you go to your own doctor. You understand? They have their own midwives that deliver the children. You understand? We don't have
There's a
that.
lot of honoring of their ancestors too. You can go, I've gone into nail salons and they right there at the desk. You see they have it set up. They're a little altar, and you would miss
The
it.
Chinese you're talking about.
Chinese.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Asian,
Chinese restaurants too.
Vietnamese,
You see it in the Chinese restaurants too.
Vietnamese, it doesn't matter. Not just the Chinese, the
Yeah.
Vietnamese, the Koreans. They all practice, and they do it in front of
And it's funny how they can come to America and set up and get us to buy it on a regular basis. So don't tell me you can't do it, because you get people that come over here from countries all over the world,
Yeah.
and they open businesses. Let me tell you something. It's a true story. The neighborhood my father grew up in, Brooklyn. You can go back there today. Kid you not. If you go back to when my father was a kid, and he was telling me this was in the late 50s, early 60s. You had a Chinese couple that moved from China, opened up a laundromat. That's all they had, a laundromat. You go there today, they got about 10 businesses on that block. 10 businesses, a convenience store, Chinese mall, they got a market, they still got the laundromat. They got all these businesses. Now they have about 3-4 blocks radius of where they got businesses spread out. Because, I bring that up because, this might offend some people, but I couldn't really care. Most American people are lazy as shit. That's the problem. They don't have a work ethic. They want everything given to them for free, and they don't want to do work for the shit. That's the problem. Whereas people from the Caribbean, people from Africa, people from parts of Asia, they'll come over here and get a house and have 8-9 people split the rent, and then 2, 3, 4 years later, they all have their own houses. And they'll buy a 50-pound bag of rice and 30, 40 pounds of chicken, 50 pounds, freeze it, and they'll eat that shit for the 3 months while they're saving their money. We're too good. Oh, I'm not doing that shit. Oh, screw that. Because you know what? The American culture teaches it's about me. Go for self. I got to go for mine. And this is why we bitch and complain. I always tell people, say, oh, well, all these Mexicans are coming over here taking our jobs. You want to do the shit? Do you want to do landscaping? I don't want to do that shit. Then what are you complaining about? See, the problem is they're willing to do that shit. We're not. I'm just saying we're in general. I'm not saying us in this room. Again, I want to be clear on that.
That's why it's so important how we do the ritual for ourselves, because that also helps us to bring ourselves out of the chaos.
That's right.
See, and when we come together, that also make it more stronger. You know, that's something that we don't do.
That's right.
We don't do that shit. We rather go to somebody else's stuff and try to patronize their stuff. We're not patronizing our stuff or ourselves, bringing that light out within ourselves.
That's correct.
You know, so.
And that's a problem, because, like I said, you'll find in a lot of circles, people can bitch and complain. Everybody will tell you what the problem is, but nobody brings any solutions. And that's why we got to stay away from that type of energy, because of what you're saying. You know, my thing is, when you look at other people that have done it over the years, You shouldn't be mad at that. That should show you that if they did it, I can do it myself too. Because these are people coming over here with nothing. You understand? It's just they're raised with a different mentality. Whereas most people that are born and raised and grew up in that traditional American quote unquote culture, you're taught as if like you're entitled to shit. People approach shit like they're entitled to it. You're not entitled to nothing in life. Establish that. Let's establish that. Everything you have in life, you have to work for and you have to earn it. Nothing is free, not even the damn air you breathe. Okay? Meditate on that one for a minute, it'll come. My whole point is, this path teaches you, that's why we say it's a path of what? Self-mastery. Not somebody's going to do it for me, somebody's going to give me something, I don't got to do no work, or I'm entitled to some shit. That's not what it means. This isn't. All right, so path of self-mastery. As I said before, and I stand firm on this, when it comes to doing work, one of the models we have in our race, it's not time to stop talking and do the work. I get in all these other circles and nobody's doing any work. I don't need a history lesson because now with the innovation and the new age of the computer and Google, I can find all that shit out you telling me on my own. What are we doing, like Yahuda said, to make a difference and change stuff? And as I said before, don't get it twisted. You can't start physically and go out and protest. And I'm not saying you can't take a stance and do things politically, but as I said before, anytime we went to war in any ancient culture, they always enacted a ritual first before they went into physical battle. The problem is we're negating the spiritual altogether and we're trying to just attack it from the physical. So all your protesting against injustice, police brutality is for naught because we should be doing some spiritual work on them. You understand where we can neutralize the brutality. That's a whole nother story. I won't even get into that on camera. But I'm just saying, we need to focus on, in order to solve something and change it on the physical realm, you have to attack it first on the spiritual and the mental. It just doesn't work if you do it the other way. And this is why there's confusion, because what tends to happen is you got so many people running around with so many different ideologies in their mind. And if you're not united, every great leader said this, if you're not united mentally, then you're not going to be united physically. We won't come together because of some people won't even affiliate with each other because of their religious backgrounds. That's ridiculous. But at the end of the day, if you were stranded and got shot and were left for dead on the side of the road, would you give two flying shits who helped you? Would you care if they were black, white, Muslim, Christian, Jew? You wouldn't care. You just want to get help. See, we only come to the realization and the reality of things when tragedy strikes. Ain't that sad? When something, see, what's going to tend to happen is when shit hits the fan, we're going to come to the realization that we all we got. Figure that out the hard way. And that's just the reality of it. And unfortunately, it's not an easy pill for everybody to swallow. But if I told you I cared, I'd be lying to you. Cared in the sense it's not going to slow me down for what I need to do. And it shouldn't slow any of you guys down for what you need to do. Like mind and like kind. You keep it moving. That's what this is about. All right, anybody else? We're going to wrap it up. Good? Good. All right, that's it. Appreciate it. Oh, real quick, just to let everybody know, I don't know, the basket right there, we just ask everybody to make a small donation for Sophia and them for using the place. They don't charge us. I don't care if it's $2, $5, whatever it is. The basket right there by the door, that's just to help them for letting us use the place for a night because they don't charge us, all right? That's it, we're done.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, I thank you guys for coming, and we'll figure out what the next one's going to be.